Hey guys, it's Shaylin and I'm here today with another video. I guess this is going to be like an as I write style video, and I'm going to talk about something really niche and weird. I don't even know what I'm going to title this video, but I wanted to talk about reviving old ideas. It's something I've done once and I'm now in the process of doing again. This is probably going to be more just me talking about my experience than advice, because I think this is a very personal process. It's going to be different for everyone, but I do want to talk about the things that have helped me. And I think it'll be clear what I mean when I start talking about this. I don't know what to call this video. This is such a random topic, but it's just like what I'm doing right now. So when I talk about reviving ideas, it's not just taking an old idea and kind of like getting back into it, but it's taking an old idea or an old project and changing it so much to the point that it's not really recognizable anymore. A book glow up. And it's not just I took this and made it better, because that's just editing. I took this and I made it super different. And I wanted to talk about why you might want to do this. So the first time I ever did this, I think this requires an example. Situation I've talked about before, and that was with my book I'm Fine. I will give the abridged version. I have a whole video where I talked about it. I think it's called Saving the Book That Wasn't Working. I'll leave that in the cards. It's from quite a while ago. That was done when I basically decided to do this. I hadn't actually found footing in the story, so I didn't even really know what the 2.0 would look like. The short version of this story, if you don't want to watch that whole last video because it's long, is when I was a youth, a youngin', a teen, wrote this book called I'm Fine. This was in 2015. I was 18. It was a passion project for me. It was a young adult contemporary novel. A few years after writing the first draft, I kind of settled in to do big revisions, and I think I did 4 or 5 drafts over the course of one summer. By the end of those 5 drafts, I kind of was hit with this sinking feeling that I just put 4 months of work into this, and it's not really better. I kind of was struck with this realization that I have an emotional attachment to elements of this piece, but there are other parts of this that I don't care about and are almost just there as patchwork to hold together the things I do like. I may have liked these things at one point, but I don't really care about them anymore. I'm not dissatisfied with this because the quality is not better than it was 4 drafts ago. The quality was better than it was 4 drafts ago. I didn't spend 4 months on something and not improve it. I didn't feel better about it. And I kind of realized I will probably never feel better about it without an extremely drastic change, because there are elements of just the storyline that I'm inherently dissatisfied with. A lot of the plot I don't really care about. Between the time of getting the idea and making this realization that I had to change something, I went through a big evolution as a writer. I was 18 when I wrote this and didn't really know who I was as a writer. I didn't really know what genres I wanted to write in, what style of story I wanted to write in. Back then I wrote like every genre that came to mind. It's not like I feel restrained by genre now, but now it's like I just have an idea of the kind of story I want to write, and those are the ideas I tend to get. Whereas back then I really didn't know where my heart was, what kind of writer I wanted to be. And there's nothing wrong with, if you want to write 6 genres, 7, it doesn't matter, you can do that. I was just doing that more because I didn't have a grasp of what genres I actually liked the most, and so I would just like try everything, you know? Like I had projects in every genre: fantasy, sci-fi, like psychological thriller, contemporary, like everything. I kind of had found my footing in a certain style of work, which was adult and like literary fiction, and more than that, not just the genre, like a certain style of story. I guess I found my brand, my personal brand. I ended up with this interesting conundrum where I had a lot of old books that I was emotionally attached to, but they came from the sporadic time of my life where I didn't really know who I was as a writer, and I just wanted to try everything. And then I went through this kind of like evolution of my style and found my style, and then I had all these old books from the sporadic time, and I was like, I don't know what to do now, because I am emotionally attached to the characters, but this project itself does not do much for me. So the first book that I did this revival with was I'm Fine. One day, this really wasn't triggered by anything. I basically had this thought, which was, I'm never gonna be happy with this book. What if I just took everything and changed it? Start anew. Start fresh. Like, this is gonna be a major renovation in terms of everything is gonna go. It's not like, oh, I changed some things about the old idea. It's like, it's not the same idea anymore. It's a different book. The new version is called Holding a Ghost. My plan is for it to be my next project that I work on when I'm done my current work in progress. I consider Holding a Ghost a different book than I'm Fine. They have the same main character, and other than that, they are different. everything about them is so different. It's one of the best things that ever happened to my writing was that decision, to be honest, because Holy Negose, it was a way for me to take something very nostalgic and personal to me, make it something I'll actually enjoy working on, fit it into my current writing style, and I think that that combination of something that was very developed in my mind combined with new elements that were exciting to me created a project that's so interesting to me. Something I wouldn't have been able to come up with on its own. After the success of that, shall we say that, oops, I have done it again. This is a very recent phenomenon and it's on my mind because it's recent and I'm in the process of doing it again. So I want to talk about the second one because I've noticed a lot of similarities appear in these two processes. And if you are thinking that you maybe want to do this, if you have an old project that you're just kind of about, some of this might be useful. The second story is a little less dramatic because it doesn't come from a book I had already written. It was just from an idea. So from that same phase of life, sporadic phase we'll call it, I had gotten this idea for this book called Winter Houses. Now, unlike it was always adult. It was like originally a thriller is what I called it. Be honest, this book had no genre. Not in that like it was genreless. It just was vague. Like there just was no genre. So I'd never written this idea. I'd had it floating around since 2015, which was the year of ideas for me. 2015 was the year where like every week I was like, new idea for a book. Most of my old ideas are from 2015. I don't know what was, something was in the air that year, but it was also like the worst year of my life. I don't know if those things are correlated. I don't know, maybe that's why I got so emotionally attached to so many ideas, like I needed something. Let's not go there. Winter Houses, I haven't talked about it extensively on this channel because I've never written it. I'm not even gonna give you a plot summary because I could not give you one. One barely exists. The plot of this book has changed many times. It's always been generally the same, but like the overarching plot or direction of the plot or structure of the plot as I have planned it has done a major change a lot of time. And I think that's because the way I felt about this book is like I had this main character that I loved. Her name is Heidi. The way I always felt about Heidi, I get very emotionally attached to my characters. They are like friends to me. I would say that I love them, care about them very deeply. But the way I felt about Heidi was different than I felt about other characters. Like other characters, I'm like, wow, I love this character. With Heidi, it was like, I am interested by her. I want to know more about her. She intrigues me. There's like something about her where it's like, I think this is a quality of her character that like other characters in the story would feel, that she's the kind of person who like you meet her and like you want to know more about her. I'd always really enjoyed this project. Like I've enjoyed thinking about it. It always had a very strong atmosphere to me, but I was always kind of like 10 out of 10 excited about the characters, 4 out of 10 excited about the plot, which is why I think the plot changed so many times. And the plot was never complete. There were always a lot of giant holes in the plot, which is why I've never written the book, because I've always been like, this needs more time for me to think about. There are long expanses of plot where I have no idea what would happen. There are a lot of questions I have. A couple days ago, I was kind of thinking about, it's tough because I want to write this project, a lot interests me about it, namely Heidi, but it does not interest me or excite me as much as any of the books that are on my current roster. I've done this once before with I'm Fine. Why don't I give this the glow up it needs? So that's what I've been doing. Having now done it once before, it's going quicker. This is a very backwards process for me. My ideas start with plot. They start with concept, and then it's character, and then I develop the character and the plot at the same time, while writing partly, because I don't outline, don't come for me. So I guess the sporadic phase was also my outlining phase, which is ironic. Now I'm like chill, calm, cool, collected, and I don't outline. Back then I was like a mess. Maybe I had to outline to compensate for how much of a disaster I was, I don't know. So it's a very backwards process for me. I don't do this consciously, but kind of intuitively would create a character that complements the concept and the vibe of the story I'm getting. Now it's like I'm working backwards. I have a character and I have to jump backwards and reverse engineer a concept. Some things that I've noticed across these two processes. The first one would be, I guess, my main tip if you're doing this. And it's that when you begin, whether you do this formally and actually write it down or just do it in your mind, I think the place and the way to start, I think there are 2 things to start from. The first one is to make a list. It's basically a yes, no, maybe list of everything in the old book. So you have everything that you definitely want to keep, everything that you definitely want to get rid of, and then you have the things in the middle where it's like, if the new story allows for it, I'll keep it. If the story doesn't allow for it, it'll go. You could make this very long and like have a bunch of scenes in it. I thought of these fairly simply. And the way I see it is those definitely want to keep things that are non-negotiable, you know? Like if it was negotiable, it would go in the maybe pile. I'm recreating this to keep only the things I like. So it's really important for me to find a way to include all those things I like. If later in the process I start to feel like I don't care about these things as much, then maybe they'll go. But like if I feel strongly about it in that moment, like I'm gonna try to find a way to work it in because I don't have a lot to work from. It's like I'm just working from those things. And then the other thing that I think it's helpful to have, and this is very vague, is just an idea of the feeling and the kind of story you want it to be. It might sound dumb, people might laugh at me, but kind of like the aesthetic of the story. I write a lot based from atmosphere and image. To me, those kinds of things are quite powerful, like really strong images that are sticking in my mind, that create a very strong feeling. That's really powerful as a starting point to me. That's something that I kind of had very strongly for both of these books. One thing I noticed is that both of them, I changed the setting and I changed the time period. I think this really helped me to separate the old version. Like if it's set in a new place, it looks entirely different. So like I'm Fine was set in a small town in the present day. Holding a Ghost starts in 1996 and it's set in Vancouver. Winter Houses was originally set, well, in a couple made up towns, and we were like out in the boonies for a lot of it. Like we were in the woods, in a cabin, and it was also set in like a general present. I don't want to reveal myself like this. I've also been thinking a lot lately about how I think when you do this and when you write in general, it's powerful to follow your intuition. I think my intuition is usually right when it comes to writing. There have been a lot of things in my work where I've been like, I don't know why this needs to be here, but I feel like it needs to be here, and I work with it and it ends up being the right thing to do in the end. Can't think of a time I regretted just following my intuition on something. I was thinking about the setting of Winter Houses because I kind of had two ideas on where to take it. Because again, I wasn't feeling the current setting. It didn't do anything for the story, and the vibe I was getting was a little different, and I was kind of getting two separate vibes. And one of them was that it would be set in like the 1980s, which, side note, recently I've been all about setting things in the 20th century. Like I am a 90s kid, but like I was born in 97, so I do not remember the 90s. Only 90s kids remember, but I don't remember because I was 3 years old. However, here's the tea. The internet and social media makes every story I want to write suck more. It doesn't fit. When I was thinking about Holding a Ghost, the main reason I moved it back was because the book starts with the main character moving to a big city. And I think moving to a big city alone is very different in 1996 than it would be in 2019. Like in 2019, you move alone to a big city, like you check up on all your friends, you see your friends on Instagram, like you can text people all the time, like you FaceTime your family. Yeah, you might still feel alone, and in a way you might feel lonelier in a different way where you're still exposed to all those people who are still together, but it's just very different than moving to a big city and really you're only going to communicate with people from back home when you set aside the time to call them. Is a small detail that in a huge way changes the story. For most of the stories I write, I feel like tonally it doesn't really make sense to include the internet, and it always feels jarring to include, but then it feels jarring to not include, you know? Like, the characters don't use the internet, that sounds fake. Being connected to everyone all the time has a huge impact on a story. So I've been setting a lot of things in the past. Winter Houses, I had two moods that I was following. One was that it might be set in the 80s, but then the other, fuck, I don't want to say this because was that it would be like semi-post-apocalyptic. And I don't mean post-apocalyptic in like, you know, like Hunger Games, you know, like, I mean, society is starting to deteriorate a little bit. It's the near future, but it's not the end of the world. I mean, you could make a case that that is happening already. It would be like a near future cusp of apocalypse, kind of, but that wouldn't be the focus. I think I took a course on apocalyptic film in the summer, which is why I was thinking about this. And I was thinking about how it wouldn't be dystopian. Like, it's not like there would be any kind of new, like, and now you must take a test to find out what job you will have and sector you will move to. Like, society would be relatively the same, but just with kind of like enhanced deterioration. Hadn't worked out the details yet. And I kind of was just thinking about how that's a very interesting setting for a story that's not related to the apocalypse whatsoever. You know, like the world can be slowly ending and people are gonna have stories that are unrelated to the fact that the world is ending. But I thought it would be an interesting thing to try out. And then I was like, okay, I'm torn between two moods. So what if it was just an alternate reality, semi-post-apocalyptic 1980s? I was kind of inspired by, like, if you've seen the show Maniac on Netflix, where it's kind of set in like an alternate reality also of the 80s, where it's like the 80s, but it's also kind of the future, and like an alternate reality of the past. Again, that wouldn't be a huge focus, it would just kind of be in the background. Part of the vibe I was getting for this book, which I think is follow those weird whims, is what I've learned, is that I had this weird feeling of kind of like semi-surrealism, where it's like that kind of writing where nothing is surreal, technically it's all realistic, but reality just feels like 1 degree off in like it's like the uncanny valley of reality. Like, you're not in another world, like it's not sci-fi, it's not fantasy, it's reality, but it's just off slightly enough that it makes you uncomfortable. That was like what I was getting for Winter House, and that it worked really well with any elements of the plot that I was already interested in. So I noticed that for both of them I changed the setting. That opened up new avenues, and then I also noticed for both of them I ended up changing the point of view. Point of view very integral to the way I'm looking at a story, and so when I change the point of view, it's like, oh, this really is a different story now. So Winter Houses I was originally just going to write in third person limited. Now I think it's going to be first person retrospective. For Holding a Ghost, it was originally first person present tense because it was YA. So that made the most sense. And now it's like, I hate talking about this, I'm really revealing myself in this video. I feel like you guys are seeing me and seeing that most of my writing is like, so I had a weird whim, I had a weird idea, I'm rolling with it. Why? I don't know. I feel like it. For both these books, there was a weird whim. My weird whim for Winter Houses was, let's set it in an alternate reality dystopian 1980s. And I don't know where that's gonna take me yet, because we're early in the process. That's gonna take me somewhere, and if it doesn't work, I'll change it. But for now, I'm seeing where that's taking me, because why not follow it, you know? Why justify it before it's possible for it to be justified? For Holding a Ghost, I had this weird whim one day where I was like, what if it was second person from a ghost's point of view? What if the ghost was telling the story and the ghost referred to the main character as you? This, I guess, is part of why I feel like I've realized that I should follow my intuitive whims more. I had this weird idea, no idea what sparked it. It was a vision. It came to me in a vision, and I was like, it needs to be second person ghost narrator. For months was on the fence about this. I was like, I feel like I should do this, but I don't know if I should. Once I committed to it, I was like, this is the right choice. This made the book. Opened up so many avenues for me. It made the story what it is. Solidified how I'm gonna approach writing the story, and I cannot see the story told in another way. I feel like I've tried to talk myself out of these weird things, because part of me is going, are you just being weird to be weird? Like, are you just trying to be quirky? Are you just trying to be experimental? And I kind of try to talk myself out of it, and then every time I follow this weird thing, it's like, if you like this idea, go with it. Your characters might change. That's the hardest part for me to reconcile with. But again, I think it's just something to roll with. I think you gotta be really fluid when you're trying to do this. Probably the reason you want to revive this idea is because part of you felt unsettled. Like, you couldn't just settle happily with how it was before. Heidi in the original book was younger than she'll be here. Oh yeah, also for both of them I used the old version as the backstory. Altered to make sense, but I use the old version of the backstory. That's helpful for me as heck, because the tea on me is I'm really bad at backstory in novels. Short stories, it's fine. I give my characters very interesting backstories. But in novels, I feel like anything that's interesting I want to make happen in the fictive present, so I'm very bad at having interesting backstories. But now I have so much stuff to use as backstory, so I basically consider the events of I'm Fine backstory with some things removed. And I kind of did the same thing for Winter Houses, where I think altered, of course, to make sense, but a lot what I was originally planning is now the backstory. The old version, Heidi did not have a job. She had worked in the past, but kind of like under the table. She lived off the grid, so she never had like a formal job, and she was, I think, like 20. Whereas now, I think she's gonna be about 25 or 26. I like to give my characters interesting jobs, and I had this whim. I have no idea where this came from. What if she works in a morgue? It kind of made sense for her to work in a morgue, almost in a way where, like, it's not because she's a kind of morbid fascination with it in any way. It's almost just because being surrounded by dead people does not faze her. So, and then I looked into it, and like, you don't need a college education to be a mortuary technician. It made so much sense. It would work so well with the circumstances of her life. And I was like, oh my god, Heidi the mortuary technician, why does this make so much sense? And again, it was just one of these things that I don't think I ever would have explored in the old version. Things about the character will probably have to change. Even personality wise, I think Heidi had a very specific way of moving around the world because of the backstory and where she was in life in the old version. And that's not gonna make sense anymore. She's gonna be a grittier version of that character. She's gonna have to be a more hardened character. And she was always a tough character, but she was like a tough, soft character. Whereas now I think she's definitely gonna need to be a bit more world weary. Way longer video than I thought it would be. I thought I was gonna talk for like 10 minutes and be like, yeah, so this is a thing that I've done. So I talked for like 40 fucking minutes, okay. Anyways, if you guys have ever done this, let me know. It's almost more exciting to me than creating a new idea. Like, getting a new idea is fun. The early phase of a new idea is fun. You get tons of new ideas with a character you already really understand. And that's really nice. So I'm gonna go now. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you have any questions, you can always send me an ask on Tumblr, and I'll see you in another video. Bye.